Okay, so welcome. This is the second weekly webinar. For this week, we are going to work on this question. It's basically a process diagram, which is a little bit more difficult than other process diagrams that you might have seen. So I thought it's a good idea to start working on this and to think about how this can be written. As you can see, there's a little map up here of the different islands, major islands in the Hawaiian island chain. So from Hawaii to Maui and then to the lesser known ones. And then here there's more like a cross section of the ocean bed and the ocean, and it shows the islands. It shows that the oldest volcano was created 80 million years ago. So this is the oldest one, and then we are moving in this direction. So these are the newer ones, and we see that here this section is called the Pacific Plate, like this layer, and then the layer under it is called solid dense rock, right? And there's a very, very slow movement here of 7 to 9 centimeters per year. And the volcano is under here. It erupts every now and then and it creates a new island, right? So eruption process begins here, originating 2,883 kilometers down under sea level, and then hotspot spume remains static, and then magma spume. So now, if you don't know what hotspot spume or magma spume is, it doesn't matter. You can still write the essay. Youngest volcano develops, built up by numerous eruptions. So numerous eruptions happen, and then that forms the Pacific Plate, the ocean bed, and the ocean bed basically emerges from the water surface. Okay, and that's it. Okay, so first of all, the most important tip that I'm going to give you is that in a diagram like this, in a process diagram like this, or a map, or anything that is more visual, you always have to pay attention to the things that are mentioned and try to incorporate them into the essay. That's very important. So everything has to be incorporated into the essay at some point. And I am going to follow the same structure that I always follow, which is an introduction, and then an overview, and then 2 body paragraphs. Okay? So introduction, overview, and 2 body paragraphs. With the introduction, basically what we're going to do is we are going to just give a general overview of what we are dealing with, what we see. Okay? So what the diagram shows, and what is the general information that we're getting. We don't want to go into detail because detail is necessary to be kept away from the introduction and also the overview, because we want to mention detail in the 2 body paragraphs. We can start by something like the present process diagram documents the volcanic eruption process through which, and here if you have taken my grammar lessons, you will realize that this is an adjective clause, and so it makes this a complex sentence, right? The Hawaiian island chain in the Pacific Ocean has been created. Okay, so this could be our first sentence. Now let's take a look and see if this is restrictive or non-restrictive. The present process diagram documents the volcanic eruption process. This is two processes, so let's delete this one. Documents the volcanic eruption process. Yeah, this is restrictive, so no comma. Now, although usually with restrictive we use that, here, because we have through, we can't use through that, so we have to use through which, but it still remains restrictive, so no comma. Through which the Hawaiian chain in the Pacific Ocean has been created. Okay, and we say has been created because this is the island chain is still there, because we can still see the island chain. It still exists and people live there. It's something that continues into the present, although it happened in the past. Okay, now what I want to do is I want to incorporate this map, this little map here, into the introduction. Okay, I will probably mention it later in my essay, but for now I just want to mention the islands briefly as a parallelism, right? Okay, so this is just a parallelism. It's a rather long parallelism, but it's necessary to have it because it's mentioned there. And we can say, we can add something, say among which the oldest was formed, or instead of among which, we can say, we can make it even more interesting. We can say the oldest of which was formed 80 million years ago. I think this is good for an introduction. Right now, this introduction is 48 words. Okay, exactly 48 words, which is a bit long, but that's fine. That's because of the list that we had. Okay, so let's halt here and see if you have any questions. So, what did we usually say when we're writing an overview? What do we usually put there? A key feature, right? Which is the most important feature. Okay, so the most important feature in a diagram is difficult to talk about. Most important features are usually in bar charts or line graphs and pie charts and things like that. So here, you just have to talk about the different stages or how the process works. Okay, so let me try to write something for here. So for the overview, we say overall. As usual, I start with overall, right? The diagram indicates that each island is formed by several deep sea volcanic eruptions. Let's make it a complex sentence here, which create mountain-like. So I'm creating these compound adjectives because compound adjectives are considered high level of vocabulary. So deep sea, any adjective that has a hyphen, like deep sea, mountain-like, those are considered compound adjectives, right? So what do we call these that come out of the water, like that peek out of the surface of the water, right? Or not just out of the surface of the water, but if you look at the Pacific plate here, you'll see that every eruption create like a form, a shape that looks like a mountain, right? So we can call it a bulge. Mountain-like bulges. And where are the bulges? The bulges are in the Pacific plate, right? Causing reduced relative clause, the island to rise above the water surface. Okay, this was one sentence, and then that's one key feature, how each island is formed. Another key feature is the movement, right? So for the movement, let's add another sentence. Let's add it with in addition, because we are adding information. So this movement is really slow. So what is a good word for slow? We can call it imperceptible. The imperceptible movement of the Pacific plate. And I'm paying attention here to the diagram, and I'm noticing that P is capital, right? So let's make P capital here. Allows each set of eruptions to add a new island to the chain. Okay, so here we're talking about key feature, and then we can add a final sentence. We can say a small map of the Hawaiian, of the major islands in the chain is also included. And we make it passive because, as you know, passive is for when the subject is unknown or unimportant, and here the subject is both unknown or unimportant. It's not important who included the map, and it is not known who included the map, right? Okay, now we're going to move to two body paragraphs. So we're following the same structure: one introduction, one overview, two body paragraphs, sometimes three. But right now, I think we can do it in two. Immediately, the first question that you should come to your mind is, how do we divide this information into two parts? One, in my opinion, would be a bigger paragraph, and it includes the process of creating one of these islands by the volcano. So how the volcano creates an island. So that's one paragraph, and then another paragraph is about the movement. Okay, so the movement is going to be a shorter paragraph, but this one is going to be a longer one. Let's take a look, see what first of all, let's think of a good topic sentence. Topic sentences are important for your coherence score, right? And also another thing that is important is that we are trying to include as much information from the diagram as possible. The volcanic eruption originates 2,883 kilometers below surface. Now I don't want to repeat exactly the same words here. When it says down, I don't repeat down, I say below surface. I keep that short, I put a period here. It's a simple sentence, that's fine, because that's my topic sentence. So when the examiner looks at this paragraph, he will immediately realize that this paragraph is about the volcanic eruption, right? Let's describe the process. Okay, during the eruption, let's make it a more complicated structure as hot spot spume remains trapped under the solid dense rock. So this is my subordinate clause, right? This is my topic sentence. So let me mark my topic sentence as always with the green highlighter. Okay, so that's my topic sentence and support for it. So now I have during the eruption, that's an introductory element. It needs a comma, as I always mention in my grammar classes. And then another introductory element, which is a subordinate clause, that's in another comma. Okay, and now the main clause. Magma spume, let's say, pierces both the rock and the Pacific plate and shapes an island through, because we want to make sure that we mention repeated eruptions. Here it says numerous eruptions, but we can say repeated just to avoid repeating the same thing. Okay, so I think this is good for the first body paragraph. Okay, so let's call this first body. If you don't miss anything, your task achievement will go higher and higher. Okay, if you include everything, especially if you try to paraphrase, your task unit will go higher. But be careful, like something like Pacific plate cannot be paraphrased. Solid dense rock cannot be paraphrased. But numerous eruptions can become repeated eruptions. But eruption cannot be paraphrased. I don't have a paraphrase for eruption. So don't go too crazy with the paraphrasing. Technical terms like hotspot, magma, spume, those cannot be paraphrased. You have to mention those. So your paraphrasing should be in other areas where there is no technical words, okay? I have to have some kind of continuity between the first body paragraph and the second body paragraph. Here I would say meanwhile, that means these two are happening at the same, which they are. Okay, so now we're talking about this movement, right? This movement here, and we can say, and it's also it's called Pacific tectonic plate, right? And it talks about 7 to 9 centimeters per year, and it's called a shift. I want to keep that shift, right? Because I don't have a good synonym for it. So we can say, meanwhile, the Pacific tectonic plate on which the islands are located shifts. So this is considered a paraphrase because this is a noun and this is a verb and it has an S. So that's a paraphrase. At a, let's say, very slow, because we already said imperceptible, a very slow speed of 7 to 9 centimeters per year. Okay, Now, over millions of years, this allows for the creation of several islands. And so as this Pacific plate moves and this volcano keeps erupting and this moves, it's more like it's like an island printer, right? It just prints islands one after the other. So I'm trying to talk about that. So we'll say the creation of several islands collectively, maybe collectively known as the Hawaiian island chain. Good. I think I kept it under 200. So here again I have a clear, rather short topic sentence, and it talks about the Pacific tectonic plate. So the logic is very clear. The logic of dividing the information is that one paragraph talks about the process of eruption, and the other paragraph talks about the process of movement of the plate. Okay? And those two processes happen at the same time. Therefore, I used meanwhile here. And that's it. That's the essay. So let's just remove the these headings, and then I will ask you if you have any questions. Just give me 1 second to remove these. And I can tell you like with certainty that that's like an at least band score 8.5 essay.